Okay, so now on to alchemy, spiritual alchemy. Now, Baha'u'llah writes about alchemy as related in the work of Stephen Lambden. Lambden says Christian influence on Islamic alchemy is reflected in what Baha'u'llah has to say about the divine metal, presumably gold. As for the divine metal, which is of the Father, sulfur, the Son, Mercury, and the Holy Spirit, it has become known as it was by means of the enigmatic utterance and subtle expositions of past times. Having commented on a good many sometimes abstruse alchemical dictamon, Baha'u'llah points out that the prophets and sages made mention of alchemical secrets by using enigmatic language. At the time of his delivering the Khutbah al-Bayan, Imam Ali made some cryptic remarks about alchemy. Ancient philosophers spoke in riddles lest their contemporaries treated the art in an immature manner. The following dialogue is registered by Baha'u'llah as is alleged to have taken place between Abraham, the friend of God, and his people. Now remember, the friend of God in Valley 3 of the Four Valleys of Baha'u'llah, Baha'u'llah speaks of the circle of the friend, so here we have the circle of Abraham. Abraham said the alchemical knowledge, al-ilm, is in the egg, although it is not an egg. And it was said to him, what is the alchemical work, and what is the egg, and what is other than the egg? And he said the egg is the cosmos, and the four elements, in which is the knowledge of the all. Abraham spoke in riddles, only going so far as to indicate that the alchemical work has to do with the fourfold nature of the cosmos, and likening the Philosopher's Stone to an egg. Not only Abraham, but Jesus also is represented as one who spoke cryptically about the alchemical mystery. In a rather obscure paragraph, probably inspired by an Islamic alchemical treatise, Baha'u'llah writes, and is said that Jesus, the Spirit of God, and his Word said, it is the mystery of the Philosopher's Stone, verily is existence, being, Cain, Kwan, Kun. And it was said to him, from what is it? And he said, the speech of God. So we know another representation of the 9 of the enneagram is Kun. And that's how we come to the number 9, because there are 9 letters and Kaf, Wa, Nun. So here Jesus is saying it's the stone, his existence is Kun, and is the speech of God. And we know the haruf, the letters, relate to healing in the enneagram and invoking God's names. So we have some very interesting things going on here in this words of Baha'u'llah. Now, in this very typical representation of alchemy, we see anima, spiritus, and corpus, and the 7 planets, and the 7 stages of the alchemical process. These are the same that we get in, say, the Enneagram. We have 3 main functions and same steps. Now, spiritual alchemy is self is symbolized by lead, the planet Jupiter. A nurturing process changes lead to gold. According to Bhakti, transformation comes from the unveiling of the light of the nature originated by God. This light then illuminates the spiritual aspect of the heart. Although spiritual warriors may begin the process through self-help and succeed at least in transforming from the lead to the tin of self, from the Saturn to the Jupiter of self, the final stage of actually experiencing the gold within requires the direction of a master who is equivalent of the Philosopher's Stone, but none of this can be done without the presence of God. The presence of God, the manifestation of God. So here we're talking about, the true guide through the spiritual transformation is the manifestation of God, which we know to be Baha'u'llah for us who believe in, his position, his station. Spiritual practices are the operative functionary of transformation. The basic theory is that every metal contains a combination of sulfur and mercury, which are symbolic and not to be confused with the chemical properties. For the self is lead, sulfur, reason at first confused and heavy, is heavier than mercury, the passions. These two forces, opposite and complementary, are combined with quicksilver, the breath or vital spirit, as an aspect of the universal soul. A balance is obtained, which is the principle that measures the intensity of the universal soul's desire during its descent through matter or universal nature. The process that occurs is to transform sulfur as confused, unorganized reason into sulfur as spirit. The ash that results from the burning of sulfur and mercury, where the breath acts as the fire, is symbolized by salt. Salt, in turn, ammoniac. Salt, in turn, is a symbol of justice and balance. And of course, we know Jesus said to his disciples, "Go be salt unto the world." In spiritual alchemy, the balance is between reason and the passions. The circle is the perfect expression of justice, equal in all directions in the finite domain, similar to some Native American spiritual traditions. The center point of self for the spiritual warrior symbolizes first the potential, the possibility of perfecting self, for it holds the possibility of mirroring everything in terms of inner meaning that the macrocosm holds. Once morally healed, the center point of self symbolizes justice, the soul at peace, the actualization of the external possibility of self or salvation. Geometry. 1 generates the point, nutuk. 2 the line. 3 the triangle, the most basic spatial representation. There are 2 triangular shapes in the sign of the presence of God, the enneagram, which is also known as the face of God. According to the traditional view, nature provides the self with 3 functions which can be perfected through free will and reason, in effect providing human beings with the ability to surmount nature. 1 triangular form divides the self at center point into 3 divisions of 120 degrees, each symbolizing the threefold division of the self. They are cognition, attraction to pleasure, affect, and avoidance of harm, which is behavior. Each segment of this triangular form then divides into 3 segments of 40 degrees, each 3 times 3 equals 9. The other triangle clusters around the center point and symbolizes the positive traits of wisdom, temperance, and courage. Amalgamated together, 3 times 4 equals 12, the zodiac. Threefold division of the self symbolizes 3 movements of the spirit, ascending, descending, and horizontal or neutral. 3 reflects the fundamental conception of spirit, mind, soul, and body. It also symbolizes 3 divisions of self, intellectual, emotional, and volitional, or thinking, feeling, and actions. Biologically, it's a liver, the guts, heart, and brain. Affect, behavior, cognition. Reason and the passions, nafsamara, animal self, nafslawama, blaming, reproaching self. The center reflects the self at peace, nafs mutmain. So, before we saw that there were 9 negative qualities, so now we see once you overcome the 9 negative qualities, you become just, you become balanced. Whew. Gurdjieff spoke of the Enneagram. Gurdjieff, he was the popularizer of the Enneagram in the West, or what we know of it today is like these 9 personality types. He also relates that the Enneagram is the Philosopher's Stone. Baha'u'llah wrote a tablet in response to a query regarding the Philosopher's Stone, which we now know this is likely reference to the Sufi Enneagram. Baha'u'llah writes regarding the Philosopher's Stone to know that it is the Philosopher's Stone alone that brings the alchemical work to realization. Nothing external enters into it, and nothing internal emerges from it. God verily created as a sign of his power between the worlds, the foundation. Asal, which can also be translated as root, is that about which the alchemical initiates. Sages discoursed, and the mercury is a water which trickles or is distilled from it. This water, if you are those that are informed, is the key of the affair. Should the key become available to thee, then open therewith the gates of the treasuries of thy Lord in this stone, from which rivers gush forth from before one wise well informed. So we can see, this is the Enneagram at work. It has pathways, it has different points, gates and rivers, and you can see the symbolism in the language. Bakhtiar writes about the Enneagram and alchemy. One aspect of nature that receives particular emphasis by spiritual warriors, or rainbow warriors, is that of spiritual alchemy, or the science of balance or correspondence. In the science, each of the 7 visible planets symbolizes a corresponding metal. The operative process of this science for spiritual warriors symbolizes the struggle to realize the presence of reality through transforming the self. The method of spiritual alchemy is based in cosmology rather than metaphysical or theology. The aspects of self which are made perceptive to change by nature is the substance of the work. Change takes place through corresponding the external body, seen as a metal, with internal psychological states. Now we come into something Baha'u'llah wrote about, and that one of the signs, there are two signs for the coming age of the human race. The first sign of the coming of age of humanity, referred to in the writings of Baha'u'llah, is the emergence of a science which is described as that divine philosophy which will include the discovery of a radical approach to the transmutation of elements. This is an indication of the splendors of the future stupendous expansion of knowledge. And this is in the notes of the Kitabi Akdas, note number 194. So, spiritual transformation will expand our knowledge. And the science, which Baha'u'llah never explicated on, seems to be what we're talking about here in this presentation, which is the spiritual transformation that we undergo through the enneagram practice. And this practice is really, the Sufis have a term called, muhasaba, which is self-analysis, basically, or self-accounting. And we use the enneagram. The enneagram is a tool in this practice of self-accounting, so we become more refined and transmute ourselves. So right now I want to get into, it doesn't just appear in Western alchemy, it's in Eastern alchemy, it's in Chinese alchemy, it's in Hindu alchemy. In Hindu alchemy, I want to talk about, some basic things. We have, in Hindu alchemy, there are three primary principles to nature, or prakriti. It's tamas, which is inertia, rajas, which is activity, and sativa, which is clarity or light. So again, we're talking about three things. Now in Kundalini Yoga, you have three channels of energy. Down your spine is the Sushumna, which two other energy channels or vital energy channels wrap themselves around, like the caduceus of Hermes, which you see on medical pins in modern times. This is the same thing. We're dealing with a female energy called Ida and a male energy called Pingala. The male energy is hot and dry and represented by the sun and is alchemical sulfur. The female energy is represented by the moon, is known as alchemical mercury. So, when your energies combine and you have purified yourself, incredible energy is released in Kundalini Yoga's understanding of realization, and a light grows up through the nervous system, and you see this brilliant light. And Sufism, it's known as dying in God. So we see similar practices. I mean, it's everywhere. We can look at we know there are 7 latith in a lot of Sufi traditions, and these are like the 7 chakras, and we can put the chakras in the enneagram. But people note that there really aren't 7 chakras, there's 6 chakras, and the 7th is like this other thing that has grown out of the chakras. So we have Muladhara, Swadhisthana, Manipura, Arahata, and Vishada. I'm probably butchering the names. And Ajna. And at the center, and say like a chakra enneagram, you have Sahasrara. And here's a diagram of Kundalini chakra system. Notice on the hands. For instance, when I was initiated into a Sufi order, they grabbed me by the hand. The pressure points on my hand they grabbed me according to these pressure points, which are on this diagram, which is a microcosm of the entire. The diagram on your hand is a microcosm of your body and the points in your body, and you can see the 3 nadis, the 3 channels, and the central channel, the Sushumna, And the male and female energy revolves around the chakras until you come to this realization. But it's not just there, it's also in China. I mean, in China, we here have an elemental diagram of the Chinese elements. They add another element called wood to theirs. But you can see that this is similar to the Hakel symbol of Babism and Baha'ism. But the Hakel represents the manifestation, him whom shall become manifest, the Babi Messiah figure, which we know to be Baha'u'llah. That's Baha'u'llah's like body. It's a representation of the Messiah. Here, these elements represent the body of you. These are your body. The star symbol is a body. And we have the body of the manifestation. And we have these, below the body in this diagram is a circle. And this also has, very esoteric, spiritual, transformative information contained within it, which needs further study. Then we also have in the Chinese acupuncture system, you can see that in the Chinese meridians that you have different points. Then you have in their system they have 5 channels, not 3 channels of energy. But in the torso there are 3 main channels, and that's where the main channels you see. And in Hindu yoga practice, you're really exercising your torso and releasing the energies in your torso, and so you see the correspondence that is there between the 3 energies of yoga and Hinduism and the 5 channels that you see in Chinese acupuncture, which is practiced in Qigong. You're releasing these meridians, you're engaging these meridians. And in martial arts, this is a diagram of the martial art forms you would make as you practice Taekwondo, or what is in Japanese karate, which in Korean is known as Taekwondo. And this also, the north to the south pole is exactly 9 steps. 18 steps in all. You add a central point, you have 19. So, and then in Buddhism, going along the path, it's not 9, but you have 10 steps about the ox, and then also in Buddhism and Hinduism, and it's spoken of in Yoga Vasistha, speaks of it, and in popular culture, it's the Dragon Ball. In Dragon Ball Z, it's called a Sintamani, and that's related to the Philosopher's Stone. The Philosopher's Stone is the Sintamani. So we see it in all different kinds of ways. Qi in Chinese is prana in Hinduism, is Ruah and the Semitic religions, Pneuma in Greek. It's all spirit. And we come into Judaism, and we see this representation in the Kabbalah of a tree, and there are 9 elements of the Kabbalah in the tree with the essence at the center of the tree called Zat, and it's founded in the ground of Malkuth. And if you wanted to do a diagram of the enneagram using the Kabbalah, it might look something like this. So we can have mind, which is Bina, Keter, Hokmah. One is has a polarity, a downward polarity. One has a positive polarity. One has a neutral polarity. And you can do the same thing with the other elements of the Kabbalah and come out with 9. And when you become centered, you enter unity, which is the Zat, the essence. And we are also reminded in Christianity of Galatians 5, chapter 5, verses 22 and 23, which speaks of the 9 positive virtues of spirit. Then in Romans 5:3, we understand a process that undergoes these suffering leads to perseverance, and perseverance leads to character, and character leads to hope. And that is a cycle, that is a wheel. Then we can also see the same related, here and somebody has related the enneagram to the letters of the Hebrew alphabet. We could do the same thing with the Arabic and the abjad. We already know they have different hot, cold renditions. And this tree motif is seen in Mayan tradition. Here's the tree of life in the Mayan tradition. And we know about the Ouroboros in Greek tradition. You can see surrounding this diagram at the center is a wheel. Around that is a box, and it looks like a dragon eating its tail. There are 4 branches on the tree of life. There are 7 steps up to the top of the tree of life. So continuing forward, then we come to the Yggdrasil of Norse tradition. Norse tradition has the tree of life containing 9 worlds. Now, the enneagram, the Philosopher's Stone, may be something called the Horn of Heimdall. I know of a horn of Heimdall, hidden under the high-reaching holy tree. On it there pours from Volfathar's pledge a mighty stream. Would you know yet more? Then we also understand, going back to letters, this is really interesting. The poem Havamal explains that the originator of the runes was the major god Odin. Stanza 138 describes how Odin received the runes through self-sacrifice. I know that I hung on a windy tree 9 long nights, wounded with a spear dedicated to Odin, myself to myself, on that tree of which no man knows from where its roots run. But the spear is the male energy. But you will find in Norse burials, you'll find some powerful men buried with powerful women. The men have the spear of Odin. The women have a wand, the wand of Freya. You have the male-female energy going on here in Norse tradition. And in their alphabet, the Elder Futhark had 24 runes. The Cryptic Futhark of later had 19 runes, but each of the runes were divided into 3 groups, and when you look at those groups, we can see that they are divided into the same conceptual functionaries that we have been talking about with the enneagram. So, when we have the divisions of the runes, we're talking about one division is called Freya's, or not Freya's. Her brother is Freyren's, and he is male. Then there's Hagal's division of the runes, and that is female. But then there's the god that preceded Odin, which is Tyr, and he represents the head or the mind. He's a supreme god. So throughout these Norse books, we have the Poetic Edda and the Prose Edda. One of these books is called the Voluspa, which means the prophecy of the wand bearer, so we're talking about a female prophetess. Most prophecies came from females in Norse culture. There are 9 worlds, 9 giants, and the great measuring tree is what they call it in stanza number 2 of the poem Voluspa. And stanza number 56, he fights a serpent and walks 9 paces, and Aesir uses runes while passing judgments. These are the gods. The phrase, "Do you still seek to know, or what?" which refrains throughout the poem, is repeated 9 times, dividing the poem into 9 sections. So we get, again, we're seeing these 9 divisions, 3 functionaries. So it seems to be that there is this Proto-Indo-European religion, which is a deep spiritual tradition that is throughout the world and has always been there, getting us to go to a higher level of being, so to speak. Well, I could go more into this, but for now I think I will leave that with the basics of the Norse mythology. I'm going to close this up by reading from a tablet written by Baha'u'llah, which has at the beginning also another tablet written by the Bab on alchemy, and we can understand how we might be formulating a way to go forward through life, not just for ourselves, but collectively as well, to transform the world.